G'day folks and welcome to another episode of The Breakdown brought to you by Newstead Brewing, where we're here filming today. Obviously folks, it is semi-final week in Queensland Premier Rugby, and I don't know about our guests tonight, Jay and Paulie, but I am super pumped for this weekend.
Yeah, bloody oath, mate. I'm so chuffed. I can't wait.
It's that time of the year. Everybody wants to be a part of it, but unfortunately for us, not to be this year. So be happy to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah,
I'm not happy, but just no choice.
You get to soak up the atmosphere. Yeah. Well, mate, we thought we better get someone impartial in to talk about these final games, and by impartial, we probably meant someone that didn't get there.
Stinger.
Rebuilding phase,
Rebuilding.
The old chestnut.
Yeah, whatever helps you sleep at night, right?
The old chestnut.
Does rebuilding mean you're going to pull in a jersey again?
No, mate, we don't have to go that far.
Oh, come on, mate. Old Fox back at it.
Well, yeah, you've got to give the people what they want, eh?
I suppose you don't want to go grey any quicker, mate, do you?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're not that dilapidated as yet. Doesn't need to be rebuilt that bad.
All right, well, big weekend of footy ahead, but before we jump into the semi-finals, let's take a quick look back at round 18. So, in our first game, Sunnybank v Bond, down at the Canal, and the Dragons, 41-29, claiming the Bunter Bowl in the process. Did we ever think the Dragons were going to finish the season with some silverware?
I did, because as I said last week, they can thank me because I didn't back them. I picked Bond, and I said every time I back Sunnybank, they lose. But massive. It's been such a massive season for them by way of obviously Damon moving along and then them getting Evan in the mixer, and it's been pretty lean for the past 2 seasons. But it's massive for them to come away with a bit of silverware. And talking to Evan Willis on Friday night, he was saying that's their grand final. They're playing for silverware. Last game of the season, they were going for it, and clearly they went all in.
Yeah, credit to Evan. He's done a great job picking up Sunnybank at the back end of the season and helping them build. If they can keep that squad together, I think they'll be really good next year. And same can be said for Bond. Grant Anderson, once again, these are the 2 teams that had coach changes. Grant had to come back in after Brad Harris left to join Fiji ahead of the World Cup campaign. And, he brought the boys together really well, got them back in shape for a potential finals berth. And, credit where credit's due, they played some awesome footy at the back end of the season. And if they did manage to make the top 4, I reckon they could have had a real impact on who could potentially play in the GF.
Everyone you talk to says if Bond made the finals, if they can get on a run and make it in, they'll be so dangerous. So, yeah, if they can start well next season, that'll be the catalyst to a good season.
Yeah, that's the key, starting well. And our other game, South and Norths, Magpies finishing strong, mate, with a 42-24 win, mate.
Yeah, it was just one of those games where I guess the pressure was off. Either team were just willing to throw the ball around, and the score pretty much reflects that. And obviously, quickly shout out to Solo, but after 15 years in the game, decided to hang up the boots. 40 years old, still running around. So I was happy to see him finish where he started at Souths. And for the boys, it was just a chance just to play some footy without too much pressure around results.
Yeah, mate. 40 years old, what's your excuse?
Mate, I think they actually can't prove how old he is because he doesn't have a birth certificate.
Oh, the old Oh, well, it was good to see you boys finish with a win, mate, because as Jay and I have said, mate, 5-6 weeks ago, we had you guys locked into the top 4, but it goes to show what can happen in Prem Rugby, mate, where the competition's so tight this year.
Yeah, exactly. You look at a couple of teams earlier, Bond and Sunnybank, who at the halfway point had probably better second halves of the season than they did first, and we were just on the flip side of that and couldn't quite get the most out of the momentum we built in the first round. So then we just fell victim to just teams just being up for it, and we just didn't take the opportunities that were in front of us.
Well, then the other games that we had in round 18 saw our top 4 face off. So we had first place Brothers go against 4th place East in front of an absolutely packed out Tigerland for Old Boys Day. It was great to see so many people turn out at East for that game. Brothers got up here narrowly 23-20. Obviously we saw the return of Liam Wright from the Wallaby squad combined with Ben Moen, and they were pretty impressive in that first half, mate.
They were both awesome. Ben Moen was so good on the weekend. He is absolutely awesome. And Liam Wright was playing blindside flanker, but his combo with Tom Milosevic, they were making an absolute nuisance of themselves all day. This was a game that could have gone either way. I think the Tigers probably had the ascendancy for the majority of the match, but that fitness we always talk about and that 80-minute resolve that Brothers tend to have on their day started to come to the fore, and credit to them, they were able to get that penalty with a couple of minutes to go and then ice the game from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was a must-win game for Brothers because had they not won, they would have lost the minor premiership and Jeeps would have claimed it. Paulie, mate, you've obviously seen Brothers improve massively from last season, mate. How do you reckon they're tracking heading into the finals?
Probably not as good as they would like. Second part of the season probably hasn't gone to plan in terms of, one is showing their ability to chase games, but ideally when it comes to finals, you probably don't want to catch yourselves in those positions too often. But they're here now. They get to hit the reset button. They're in a major against Jeeps. So I guess for them, it's just about going back to what worked well for them. Maybe tweaking a few things, maybe some around set piece or some patterns, and then go from there. But I reckon it's a good chance for them to hit the reset. If they can get the win in that major, I think it'll be even better for them to get that week's rest. So, which both teams will probably be looking for.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, if you have a look at this game, I think that's the sort of tight, tough game that you want to see heading into finals, with both teams just laying it all on the line. I suppose, in contrast, to an extent, the GPS v UQ game was an absolute tri-fest with the Galpers getting up 59 to UQ 32. I was only there for sort of the last sort of 30 minutes of the match, and in terms of trying to take photos in that game, I didn't know where to stand because the ball was just going ping down the field. But an interesting clash. Jay, what did you make of that one?
It was a weird one. I really didn't pick it. UQ weren't as it was weird. They weren't as dominant as they have been over the past 6 weeks. They've actually come out of the blocks really well in the past 6 weeks, whereas on the weekend, Jeeps were right up for it and just bullied them around the park a little bit, and it seemed to get in their head. I think UQ had the best forward pack they've had all season. Angus Scott Young, Korchik, Harry Hawkins, and all those sort of blokes. So there's no reason why they should have been bashed as much as they were, but Jeeps, they fired a warning shot to the rest of the competition that they're probably the form team of the competition now going into the finals.
Yeah, I mean, Paulie, mate, you spent some time at the Galpers, mate. What have you made of their performances over the last few weeks heading into the finals, mate? They seem to be hitting their straps.
Mate, just like their well-oiled machine, haven't they? So, they've been pretty lucky. They haven't had to make too many wholesale changes due to injury. If anything, they've been able to build some great depth on the bench by introducing guys into the game nice and early, giving guys starts who wouldn't normally get starts. So
we saw Troy Simpson play a full game.
Yeah, well, exactly. And young Mossy Takiri was able to get his first start. So I think he's done a great job in terms of building a 23, which is effectively what you need in these games coming to a final to be able to finish off games. And styles make fights. And if you look at this fight with Jeeps and UQ, was really just about the forward packs, right? Like, so both built their foundational forward packs, and then it was one game where you thought UQ would probably have the edge, but the Jeeps showed how deep their roster goes. So it was credit to Jeeps and obviously Ellie and the coaching staff out there.
Well, obviously, as we said, sort of two contrasting games between the different top four sides as we head into the semis, and obviously opponents change. So let's throw forward to this weekend's matches. Let's start with the minor semi, UQ versus East. Now, Jay, the UQ, they're the team that we thought would not be there at the business end of the season, mate. You're not alone, mate. There's probably lots of people.
I was about to say, thanks for saying we.
We won't leave you out to dry, mate. But, they've come through with the goods, mate. They seem to fix up what was a slow start to the season, mate, and they've grounded out wins and put themselves in a position now.
They've had a hell of a 2 months of footy. Absolutely massive, and they're starting, and they've got those Queensland Reds players coming back. Jock Campbell's massive. Obviously, Angus Scott Young was there on the weekend, Korchik, Hawkins. And then there's chat that Tate McDermott could be getting 20 minutes or so off the bench as well.
Yeah,
so that is absolutely huge, and that's something that's going to kickstart them big time because they were the form team in the competition over the past 6 weeks. But it'll be interesting to see what that loss to Jeeps does on the weekend. Does that sort of quell that momentum they've been building up against a side that we know is probably the most consistent in the competition in the Tigers?
Yeah, this is true. And Paulie, mate, obviously South and East have got a tight rivalry. You played against them, mate. You coached against them the last couple of years, and that clash a couple of weeks ago out at Gypsywood Oval, mate, was a cracker of a game. How do you think the Tigers are framing up, mate, as we head into the business end of the season? Yeah?
I think they're shaping up really well. You look at that forward pack and the inclusion of Ben Mullen, and I've been really impressed watching him go about his business. He's really kind of galvanised and lifted the standards of those around him. You had Liam Wright, and a few others, and they've really, almost overachieved. And you look at a team like UQ with all the inclusions of the Reds, you'd almost call them UQ Reds. But I think East have what it takes. They've got a great coaching staff there, and there's a good temperament in and around their forward pack, and more importantly, their leaders to go out there and get the job done. And mate, it's going to be a good contest.
Well, I mean, here's an interesting thing to think about in terms of the teams as we head into finals. So Brothers have started with wrong side for a flight half all season. I don't think James Dalgleish has missed too many starts for UQ. GPS have obviously had DP delaying and Davis Tavita sort of working in tandem before Bryce Hegarty's come back in now, and I think he's probably cemented in that 10 jersey for the finals, unless something goes wrong, touch wood. But the Tigers, since losing Jack Frampton, they had Lockie Kirk start against Sunnybank, and they had Reece Jacks, who's come over from East Tigers Leagues all of a couple of weeks ago, start on the weekend. So it seems funny that we've got a team heading into finals that's sort of still experimenting with who the actual playmaker is going to be as we head in. But, I was pretty impressed with Jacks on the weekend, Jay. I mean, you were there live, mate. Got to see it.
Yeah, he was awesome. I hadn't really seen anything of him. And then I was wondering who he was for a bit until one of the guys in the stand let me know. And you could see that leaguey background. He had a really good kicking game, very smart kicking game, which is something that you need, especially when you are missing sort of some finishes on the wing. Nothing against Ripper Riley Cooper and Maxley Baker, but, when you've lost Gordo, when you've lost sort of some of your big name sort of finishes, it can be tough to direct those guys around. So you need to be a bit smarter with how you play. And they've been the best team in the competition with being adaptable. They can take on any team in the competition at their own game. So being able to get him in the mixer is absolutely massive, especially you saw in the weekend, Phoenix Hunt was good, but Eli Pills was better. His addition off the bench is absolutely huge. And when he comes on, he's so good. So I think you can expect to see sort of that 1-2 combo coming from East, but also from UQ on the weekend if Tate gets in the mix.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned the outside backs there. I reckon that's actually where UQ could potentially get a bit of ascendancy, mate, because I don't think Jock Campbell would have had a season at the Red Heavies where he hasn't played finals. He's got experience. He knows what he's doing as we head into the big dance, mate.
And he's a gun.
Yeah, he is a gun, mate. He's only gotten better since coming into the Reds program. So I reckon that's a potential key point of difference for UQ. And as we've mentioned, it's going to be up to the East forward pack to really sort of quell what sort of front foot ball UQ can get to try to unleash those outside backs. But we'll throw to the major semi-final. We got a taste of this just a week ago in that round 17 clash at Crosby Park, which was a cracker of a twilight game. Brothers versus GPS. We'll kick things off with you, Paulie, for this one, mate. As we mentioned, you spent some time at Jeeps before joining South, mate. You spoke about how they're tracking into finals. Yeah. How do you see this matchup with Brothers, mate, going after just a fortnight since they last played?
It's going to be interesting, Sauce, because you look at it, and Jeeps have got the chocolates on them twice now throughout the season, and won't count for nothing come on the weekend, but I'm sure Brothers won't want to let that be the third time in a row. But it's quite interesting looking at it. I think Jeeps at the moment looks to have their measure in terms of Brothers at what they offer. No doubt, Brothers will be working towards a game plan to try and stifle that Jeeps forward pack and that momentum that they play off that with obviously Bryce in that back line. But I think looking at it, if Jeeps has continued the way they have been playing, especially up front, very hard team to stop. So that will be, again, it's just going to come down to which forward pack dominates the most, I think.
And I mean, J-Mo, in terms of Brothers, a month ago or so, we probably wouldn't have thought that anyone was really going to hold a light to them because they were just going about their business, getting win after win. But it's probably been a shaky couple of weeks for them as we head into the finals.
Look, God, I'm about to say something stupid, I reckon, for the umpteenth time in my life. But Brothers are probably the shakiest out of all four sides in the top four, which is weird to say about the minor premiers. In the last 4 weeks alone, they've been beaten by UQ, they've been run to the death by East, and they've lost to Jeeps, and not just recently, but also twice this season. So these are their three bogey sides that they're going to be potentially coming up against in the next 2 weeks, if not 3. And they haven't been convincing over the past month. So it'll be interesting to see. They're too good to not lift for the finals. Their under-20s contingent Michael Wood's obviously out of the mix with that ankle injury, but Harry Wilson was back to his best on the weekend. Fraser came off the bench and had 2 massive turnovers. So they're starting to find their way back into the form they were showing before they went to Argentina. So they'll be really good, but they're very much on shaky ground and all the pressure is on their shoulders. So if they don't win this weekend, they very likely could go bang bang.
This is true. Well, potentially they could have a big inclusion. Don't know if this will come off, but potentially maybe Taniela Tupou comes back from Wallabies for a run. Could be big, but we'll wait and see. It worked out for them last time they were in finals.
How? So, what? Really?
Potentially.
Stitch
I
up.
know.
Stitch up.
I know Taniela wants to, but we'll wait and see if that comes off.
Yeah, right.
Not. Don't take my word 100% for it, but possibility.
One Geordie Bataille looking for a run as well, mate? Or?
Well, speaking of outside backs, I reckon one bloke who we will see feature in the finals, who's been very impressive the last few weeks, and there's big raps on this kid, Josh Fluke. He captained our Reds Academy side in their first clash down in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, but 17 years old, coming off the bench for Brothers the last few weeks, and speaking to his Colts coach, Ben Travers, he reckons he's one of the best kids he's ever worked with, plays outside centre or wing, and he was sitting on the bench just before kickoff looking pretty dusty after what was a pretty hard-out Colts game, and then had to go on with sort of within the first 5-10 minutes for an injury as well.
Georgie Partridge pinged his hemi. Chasing kick. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. But yeah, pinged his hemi pretty early on, and then Josh Fluke got thrown in the mix, but he held his own. He's not a big lad, but mate, he's tough as an old boot. He was ripping in big time.
No, it'll be good to see how he handles the finals pressure. But I mean, like the other thing to talk about with these two clubs, and this is really impressive to see, is that they've got teams in all grades, all senior grades as we head into finals. I know Jeeps don't have their Colts teams in. Brothers are obviously a very strong Colts club, but I mean, how awesome is it to see Brothers and Jeeps top down? Like, that's going to be massive for crowds at Ballymore over the next few weeks.
Oh, big time. To be able to pack out so many people on both days, it's what you want to see. And they're historically two of the biggest teams in the competition. Massive number of juniors. They've always been strong across all grades. They've been lacking a bit over the past few years, but it's good to see both sides absolutely humming, as much as it kills me to say it. But it's good. When Brothers and Jeeps across all grades are doing well, Club Rugby and Brizzy's doing pretty bloody well.
Yeah, and I think normally people always measure success by whether your premier team is in the finals or whatnot. But I guess it's a testament to both clubs to see all the other grades in with the chance for the finals as well. So it's a testament to all their hard work and all the coaches and I guess the players are willing to put their hand up to don the jersey. Yeah,
well, it's going to be an absolute banger final series, and these two games in particular this week, folks, they're on Sunday afternoon. Obviously, the finals run over 2 days at Ballymore with lower grades on a Saturday, then flowing through to third grade, reserve grade, Prem Colts, and the Premier grade on Sunday. So get out to Ballymore for what is going to be a cracking weekend. Now, one thing to point out as we head into this final series is this is going to be the last final series at Ballymore in its current form before it gets redeveloped. So I thought before we head into the weekend, let's have a quick little sort of reflection on some of our favourite finals moments from Ballymore. So Paulie, we'll kick things off with you, mate. It's probably pretty easy to picture which was your favourite memory, mate.
Mate, probably hard to go. It's probably my only memory actually at Ballymore. But it was 2015 when we walked away with the championship. It was an amazing story. We come from fourth, won that minor, went on to win the preliminary final, and then Mears played East in the final and able to walk away with the victory. But I guess it's not just the victory, but the manner in which a couple of those semi-finals only by a couple of points. One was a penalty after the fact, after the final whistle. So, and I think the biggest memory would probably be playing alongside Jimmy Turner. And
Jimmy Turner was massive for you boys, mate, in that final series. He was awesome.
Man, he was. And the best thing to come out of this was that presentation night when, he was looking quite despondent. And I asked Jimmy, mate, are you all right, Jimmy? He goes, Paulie, I just can't do it. And I said, what's that, mate? He goes, mate, there's 2 number 8 legendary South members in this room right now. And I'm not going to be the first one to leave. Guess who the other number 8 was? Toto. So he likes to think of himself up there with the upper echelon of number 8s in the country, old Jimmy T. But he's
what a
special. Playing a bit of AFL now, I think so. But yeah, that was the memory, definitely 2015 final.
Jesus, who leaves South to go to AFL?
He runs triathlons and stuff as well, I think.
Okay, that's fair enough. Fitness freak. But
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
that final series was immense, mate. And your first final since 2009 as well, and you saw the South boys pack out the hill, great atmosphere, and so your crowd from South mate is some of the most vocal supporters out there. Get the squawks going and stuff like that from the hill. It's awesome. But Jay, mate, a West boy, what's sort of your favourite memory to look back on?
2006, it's absolutely massive for us. It was my first year at Colts, first year obviously coming into the senior setup, and it was a bit of an eye-opener. Myself, Chips Blanche, John Alcock, guys like that in a Colts team where the Premier Grade side is so bloody good, but they're notoriously loose off the field as well. Something you don't typically see very much nowadays. And it was something, looking back on it, you sort of take for granted. The ability to be able to have a beer as a Colt or even just as a spectator with guys like, Tim Mosey, Brendan Walsh, Mike Swenson, all those sort of guys who now I consider friends, but at the time I'm a 17-year-old kid, and you don't typically mingle with those guys, and it's not until you're a bit older that you start to realise how bloody good they are, and they go on in that final to win by a point. Crystal Garrard gets 3 tries. Cassidy Holland, John Rowe are all playing. It's just absolutely massive. And I remember just sitting on the hill, and I remember Hunter Thomas actually gave me grief because I wasn't getting as loose as he was. Somehow that's a point of contention for Hunter.
Is anyone getting as loose as Hunter?
No, not at all. But Hunter. But that's it. Like, that was my first sort of foray into seniors at Clubland at West, and I think it really forged the pathway in regards to how much I really get around the club, both on and off the field, is because you saw that sort of culture when we were coming through in the Colts system. And it's obviously a bit of a different game now, but it's something you want to try and instill in people, and that's the sort of thing you want to do. You want to be able to get on the hill with the younger blokes at Ballymore on grand final day, if the doggies were to have ever make it, and sort of get around it the way they got around us. So.
No, true. Well, I think my first experience with the final series at Ballymore was probably a bit different to you guys. I grew up on the sunny coast, so the first time I came down to support a team at the finals was 2010. So I was 20 at that point. It was my first year senior footy up on the sunny coast, rolling around for USC, and the Stingrays, or the Stingrays, however you want to call them, for when they were in the competition. They had the Rolls Royce of lineups. Todai Kepu, South's legend, came in as coach. You had Caleb Routh playing at fullback, which was awesome. You had Freeney was playing there at that point. Elliot Hagan on one wing, who I've been in Colt system with. He'd come through the system there. Mitch King was part of that side as well, now a Jeeps legend. And then you had who were some of the other guys? Like Charles Wiley, who was like, when you were an 18, 19-year-old kid coming up on the sunny coast, and Charles Wiley was playing number 8 for the Stingrays, he was an absolute beast. But obviously they went down to UQ that day. UQ had all their Reds boys come back, so guys like
excuses, mate.
Chip Hansen, Adam Byrne and whatnot came back and played. Luke Morahan running around at that point. But tight clash in the wet. But that was awesome to get down to support Stingrays. And then obviously 2013 was sort of the first time that I'd sort of covered Prem Rugby in full, and had moved down to Brisbane at that point and had joined East, and obviously we'd made the semis in 4th grade that year, and Steve Keffy ruined that for us. But then Prem grade went on to make the final and obviously win it, and seeing Jack Mullins lift the Hospital Cup and just the biggest grin in the world on his face for that. Yeah. I think that sort of really ignited my passion for QPR, like you said, in terms of how you want to get around it now and support it. I think the way that season panned out for the Tigers really sort of lit a fire underneath me to give back to this competition as we continue to do each year. So that was really special. And Tigers back in the finals this year. Hopefully, we wrap it up before Ballymore gets redeveloped.
Nice try, mate.
All right, folks. Well, that's it for this week's episode of The Breakdown, brought to you by Newstead Brewing. As always, thanks for joining me, Jay and Paulie.
You love it, Sauce.
You love it, Sauce.
Clearly love it. All right, folks. Well, as we mentioned, games are at Ballymore across Saturday and Sunday this week. If Jay can keep a straight face, he'll be there early doors at around 8:30 for both days, because obviously we're going to be there to support all grades this weekend. If you want a taste of what's to come, go back to last week's 6th grade coverage. That is the perfect example of what to expect out of club rugby at Ballymore over the coming weekends. Make sure you're ready for a long couple of days as well. If you are pigment challenge like me, make sure you bring sunscreen, plenty of beer money, plenty of food money, and get ready for what's going to be a cracking couple of weekends of footy. In the meantime, stay tuned via the Queensland Premier Rugby Facebook page for more updates.